Hello, welcome to Chrissy's Books. I am your girl, Chrissy. Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's book. So for this week, I have a book that I've been reading for a very long time, but finally getting the review out. And it is Traveling Black, A Story of Race and Resistance. By Mia Bay. Huge thanks to Harvard Press for sending this book out to me back in 2021. I have been reading this book for literally, I think, a year and a half, maybe more. During my reading slump, I just was like, it was just there and I'd pick it up and read like a page and a chapter here and there. But I finally finished it in February of 2023 and finally getting around to the book review in May. What? So yeah, it's been a slump, but I'm getting into reading again. So finally getting the book review out. The theme for this year for Black History Month, which was in February of 2023, was Black Resistance, A Journey to Equality. So interesting timing, like to have been reading this book and actually finished it in February of 2023. Really ties in with the theme of Black History Month this year. So this is a really great book to read throughout the year or anytime really, but it really does deal with resistance to do with traveling. So I remember being really drawn to this book because of this awesome book cover. Like, I really love this book cover. Like, I actually had this on my bookshelf for like just displayed because it's just so cool. I really love this book cover, and also obviously what it was about. So I'm a person that really loves to travel. You can follow me on Chrissy on the Move, and it really just interests me to learn about what it was like to be Black and to travel, you know, across the US during the civil rights era, and before that as well. So yeah, it just really seems like an interesting topic, and yeah, let's get into what Traveling Black by Mia Bay is all about. So I'm going to be reading from my little notes because I can't remember everything. Mia Bay, a professor of American history at the University of Pennsylvania, writes a book that highlights what travel was like for the Black race during the Jim Crow era and navigates a plethora of discriminatory travel accommodations. From segregated train stations to airport terminals and whites-only service stations and accommodations, Mia Bay went back to the sources with some basic questions such as, how did travel segregation begin? How did it move from one form of transport to another? And what was it like to be caught up in this web of contradictory rules? From stagecoaches and trains to buses, cars, and planes, Traveling Black explores when and how and why racial restrictions took shape and brilliantly portrays what it was like to live with them. Bay sources a great amount of supporting evidence and unearths forgotten stories of passengers who made it back home despite being insulted, stranded, and ignored. This is a digestible and insightful masterpiece. This book helps explain why the long and unfinished journey of racial equality so often takes place on the road. So that's what this book is about. And stay tuned for my review for Traveling Black. I loved the simplicity of the structure of this book. Bay splits each mode of transportation into 7 simply laid out chapters in this book. So it was actually really nice for me to pick it up and read it, even though it took me like forever to finish this book just because I was in a reading slump. But it was very easy to just pick up, you know, wherever you wanted and just kind of read sections within the book. So I liked the structure of this book. It was really simple. I just found it very easy to get into. And she frames this book from the beginning of the antebellum era to the present day that we're in now. And I really loved this quote in the introduction of the book. Kind of like set the tone for the book, for me anyway. American identity has long been defined by mobility and the freedom of the open road, but African Americans have never fully shared in that freedom. I don't know, I just really love that quote. So many great quotes in this book. I really love that about it. So I've always felt that to be true even to this day. So many Black people still and will always have that fear of traveling safely and not being discriminated against. This is something that the white race will never know about, really, from our perspective, and how it feels to travel as a minority race across the US. I absolutely love the intro chapter, The Road to Plessy. I learned a lot, actually, about the antebellum South in this book, really. Like, I knew a lot about it. I, read a lot of race and civil rights era, Jim Crow era types of books, but I learned a lot of fun facts in this book, and I really especially liked that chapter, Road to Plessy. She covers a lot of subject areas around the Jim Crow era, such as legalizing segregation and how that came to be in travel, and the key civil rights cases during this time, and so much more. One of the most fascinating things that I learned while reading this book is all of these well-known companies in the US, such as the New York Globe, Greyhound, Trailways, Ford, all these staple American companies that have been here for forever. They all really played a role during the Jim Crow era, and she delves into that in this book, and I really liked learning about that, especially because I actually travel a lot, and I've used Greyhound, I've used Trailways lots of times, and it's just really interesting to learn about the history of these companies and what role they played during the Jim Crow era. And I have to say, the beginning chapter of this book was just stellar. You learn all about the companies that didn't cater to Black travelers within aviation, restaurants, airline companies, and so much more. Although this book, it's a big book. She's a big book, okay? Although this book might seem like it would be dense and maybe difficult to read, it was actually very, very digestible. I found it very digestible. And it was all due to the great writing of the author. She did an amazing job. And I love how she also threw in real life accounts from past travelers, and also quoting companies that contributed with segregation. And I especially loved all of the amazing images that she included within each chapter or sections in this book. So many. I have to show you a few of them. Like this one here, I don't know if you can see that, but there's so many amazing pictures, real pictures that are trickled throughout this book. And I really loved that. I really loved seeing all these pictures because it's like, oh my God, really, that was life. It was horrible. As you read this book, and the more you read it, when you get especially into the middle sections of the book, it actually becomes very comprehensible and flows so much easier. I really enjoyed learning simple facts such as how Black people were taken advantage of when it comes to insurance policies, with the cars. That chapter was really fascinating. That was really cool. It was in the cars chapter. And just what it was like for Black people and the difficulties they faced to travel across the states. She obviously also covers in the sort of car chapter about the Negro Motorist Greenbook, which I'm sure everybody knows what that's about. I'll link it in the bio. And that book was really a lifeline for Black people traveling in those southern states, during the Jim Crow era. And I just really liked that she delved into that a little bit more and talked about the beginnings of it and how that came to be. Again, including really amazing images throughout the book. That was a really cool chapter that I liked. And then I will say, as somebody who flies a lot, I learned so much in the aviation sort of chapter of this book, why we really do not see any people of color who are flying planes, it's amazing when you really learn about the history of how aviation came to be and how it was for Black people couldn't even fly back then. It was mostly a luxury thing to fly back then. It's a really, really great chapter for me to kind of learn about the aviation and why you only see mostly white pilots, usually men, flying planes even to this day. I will say that I loved how in the last few essays of this book, Mia Bay looks at our current climate and touches on subjects such as racial profiling, how it all started and evolved to our current time. You know, Black people being stopped on the road is something that's so common. She discusses how Black people to this day are still being racially profiled even when flying, how traveling Black is an ongoing issue. You know, it's not something that's finished. Like, as a person of color who travels and as a person of color who's done a massive road trip across the US and have, you know, experienced racism firsthand, it's still very much out there. And it's the reason why I started my travel blog, because I want Black people to be able to access these outdoor spaces safely and to tell people about areas where I'm like, this is a little bit sketchy, or this area was cool, this is diverse, that wasn't, like, because I've really seen it all and it's still a problem to this day. And I very much agreed with the last chapter of this book that, you know, the fight still isn't over. We still have to fight against discrimination on the road, on planes, wherever. Let's get into my rating for Traveling Black by Mia Bay. So I gave this awesome book a rating of 10 out of 10, people. Yes, I loved it. It was excellent. No critique. Just a really good book about race and resistance and traveling. All passionate subject matters that I'm interested in. So I loved it. It was a great book. Definitely read it. And if I could describe Traveling Black with 4 words, they would be, just reading from my notes, insightful. So I really learned a lot while reading this book. I mean, I knew a lot about the Jim Crow era. Like, I did know a lot of history surrounding this because I've read a lot of books, I've watched a lot of movies and all of that. But this book really dissected the many, many ways in which Black people struggled with traveling during the Jim Crow era from back then till now. And I love learning about the many companies that participated in the Jim Crow era. And a lot of them are still very active to this day that I've used. And I'm like, why? Why did I travel with these people? Like, so yeah, I'm just gonna say, like, Black people need their reparations. And as someone who's an avid traveler, I am always aware of myself when I'm in spaces that are not welcoming. And I don't necessarily always feel safe when I'm traveling across the US as a Black person. So I'm glad that in a way my feelings are validated. I mean, they always are. They are validated. But sometimes some people just don't understand what it's like. And I'm just glad that this book does. So it was very insightful, people. Second word I'd say is engaging. I loved the different chapters in this book and the way that they were all laid out. It was very simple, very easy to like pick up and read whenever you want. You can skip chapters and come back to it, etc. And also I really liked that the sections weren't too long. Like when you read like a little chapter section, it's not long at all. I was never bored while reading this book. I very much also enjoyed the visual images that are trickled throughout the book. If you want to see some of them, look at my written review, which I have in my description box, and you can see some of the images that are featured. I would 100% read this book in the future again, like no doubt about it. It's so good. The third word is powerful. This was a really powerful book. It shows us that Black people have always and will always struggle, I think for many years to come. As harsh as that sounds, it's just the truth. And anyone who likes to read books about segregation, about race, about resistance, should definitely add this book to your to be read pile, for sure. And the fourth word is superb. I mean, I gave this book a 10 out of 10, guys. I'm just saying, it was a stellar read, to simply put it. It was just great. It was superb. It was awesome. I loved it. to wrap it all up, I will say that this was an absolutely fantastic, insightful, and riveting read. You will learn a lot about segregation in travel during the Jim Crow era. You will learn about the first Black pilots and aviation within the African American race, which is something I knew very little about, and all about the world records and achievements. Like, she really covers a lot in this book. It was amazing. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who's interested about learning what it was like for Black people to travel during the Jim Crow era. If that's an area of interest to you, you should definitely check this book out. Also, a really great book for students who maybe are studying a similar topic to resistance during the Civil Rights era. This is a really fantastic book to read for the theme for Black History Month for this year, which is resistance. Yeah, it was a really good book. I loved every single chapter of this book. I love this book way more than I thought I would have liked it. So I would very, very highly recommend it. It's a great book. Now let's get into my song pick for Traveling Black. So this song actually got a lot of controversy because I think they were like sued or whatever, but I still think it's an anthem. This song is a really good song, and the song pick that I chose for this book is Outkast. Sorry, that's not the song. The artist is Outkast, and the song is Rosa Parks. So that's just a really cool song. I've always really liked that song. And also Rosa Parks, you know, bus traveling, like, totally ties in with the theme of this book, race and resistance. And yeah, check out the music video. It's a great song. I love the blackness of this music video. It's great. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning into my book review, y'all. Stay tuned. Bring in some more book reviews your way. Have an awesome week. And yeah, subscribe, like, comment. Let me know your thoughts. And see you next time.